Giants team owners. We got Jay and Johnny. We got everybody, and we got a Super Bowl date with Tom Brady. Skull, skull. The crowd started chanting. They were going, Foles, Foles, Foles. They were doing it all day, and the Eagles, 38-7. Nate, you said it. Alshon did ball out. He had 2 touchdowns. Deion Sanders won a couple NFC title games himself, and he gave the call to the Eagles' #1 wide receiver. Go get it, Prime.
What's up, baby?
What's good, Prime?
How
What's
you
up?
doing?
What's up, LT?
What up?
How are you feeling, man, right now?
It's a great feeling, man. I'm enjoying this, man. Say be where your feet are, so I'm gonna enjoy this, man.
Hey, you guaranteed this, man. You called this when you got traded. When you left the Bears, you said, you know what, I'm going to the Super Bowl.
Hey, man, I didn't say what team, but hey, we got one more game, though, Prime. We got one more.
Hey, talk about your quarterback, Nick Foles, the job he has done this whole postseason.
He's doing a great job, I mean. Everyone just keep doubting him. Just keep proving everyone wrong. He just focuses more in detail, just talking to him, just communication, just the game plan. I mean, just he's comfortable. I mean, in 2013, he did the same thing. He's showing everyone. Don't forget about him.
And when you was watching that early game, you said, okay, do I get to deal with the Jaguars with 2 of the best corners in the game, or I get to deal with Brady on the other side of the ball?
I mean, me personally, I feel like, they said Brady the best. That's what we want. That's how I feel. I mean, hey, I'm on the line. We want to do Patriots, so it is what it is. Hey, let the chips fall where they may.
The happiest I've ever seen Alshon.
Awesome.
Actually smiling there. Super Bowl 52 is set. Eagles and Pats at US Bank Stadium in a rematch of Super Bowl 39. Pats won that one. Nick Foles, from Scholes to Foles, he entered the game as one of the biggest question marks for the Eagles, and he answered in a huge way. Let's hear from the winning quarterback after this one.
I mean, words can't really describe what I feel right now. I said it out there, all glory belongs to God. I mean, I wouldn't be here without any of that, and just I'm grateful and humbled to be a part of this team, to be in this moment, to share it with our family, our fans, all the people that love the Philadelphia Eagles, this franchise, my teammates. It is honestly unbelievable, and words just can't describe.
He was on his GOAT game. At home against a really tough defense that did not show up and was not ready. Thoughts on this game, guys?
Listen, it's a great game for Nick Foles, and I can appreciate the fact that for what we thought about Nick Foles, he went out there and proved everybody wrong. You know, I had the Vikings winning this game because I thought that the defense would step up big and the running game for the Vikings would control the ground. But Nick Foles went out there and played almost as good as Carson Wentz would. You said that in the production meeting. I thought that was pretty profound because you're right on. I remember talking about Nick Foles and saying, let me remind you, he had 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The Eagles would be just fine. And people literally laughed at me and tried to laugh me off of Twitter and said, Nate, you're crazy. Nick Foles is not going to do the job. But he has more talent around him than he did when he had that amazing run and went to the Pro Bowl. So today was an example of a guy that's ready for the moment, a guy that stepped up, and even though he's a backup, played like a starter in this league.
And it was such a magnificent performance from a guy that everyone said they can win if he just does not make a mistake. And instead, he led them. It was incredible. The numbers, I mean, 26 of 33 for 352 and 3 touchdowns. He was the best quarterback this weekend of all the 4 that played, and he was incredible in this situation. But I look at the whole array and the coaching and everything, and I'll just say this: 3rd and long, 3 different times. They had 3rd and 8 or more in the first half. They converted every single time. They had 10 third down conversions. You don't lose games that way. And we'll break down the game all day long, but I'll say this: hats off to the Eagles fans, because very rarely in life, as a sports fan, do you not only get to win, but you get to enjoy the win. And that one was a demolishing of the Vikings. The Vikings, I don't even know if they showed up yesterday, but the Eagles,
it's a terrible
they were there.
day for Minnesota. And I don't think Carson Wentz could have played that well. I mean, he's the future of the sport. Genuinely, he couldn't have been as good as Nick Foles was yesterday. And how different was Foles from the Atlanta game? The Atlanta game was very coached and very packaged, very produced. You know, it was almost like Bortles-like. Let's not let him mess up. This was just let him chuck it. And we'll have 2 weeks now to talk about the story of Nick Foles and everything. But purely as a football player, when Nick Foles gets a hot hand, he is unlike any quarterback in the league. I'm telling you, the 7 touchdowns, the 4 against the Giants. I mean, Philly has seen a hot hand. We're talking Hersey Hawkins and Kyle Korver and Dana Barros. This guy was incredible yesterday. Not good,
not excellent, absolutely incredible against what's supposed to be the best Vikings secondary we've ever seen, and they had a long night. It's a long night.
It's sort of wild. Carson Wentz goes down, they lose their MVP, and I'm thinking there's no way that they can make this happen. Then Jason Peters, they lose him. How can you sustain that? You have a great record, but are you going to really make it all the way to Minnesota, the Super Bowl? They win and executed, and there was definitely something about him playing looser. It was about him do what feels right to you. It seems like when he does that, that's when they have the most success.
You know, I got to credit you, Shregs, because you were talking about the front office for the Eagles for a long time. Even before I started to pay attention, and you introduced us to actual people that are friends of the show. And shout out to Roseman Peterson, all these people that are the collective that brings in new talent. And you look at yesterday's game, Alshon Jeffrey, who they brought in to make a huge difference, the guy they just paid. Torrey Smith, who they got in to come in and bring the top off the coverage. Jay Ajayi looks faster than he's ever looked before. So, I mean, just a host of players, of course, on offense and on defense. But that's what I noticed. That's what stood out to me. Of course, the foundation guys, the guys that you can count on being consistent were there and showed up. But it's the guys you bring in. And that doesn't happen a lot. I was a free agent twice over. There was often times where I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And I felt like I walked off the field and didn't exceed expectations. They did that and more. So credit the front office and credit those free agents that came in and made themselves feel like home and played like big-time players yesterday.
To that point, it was only so many years ago that the Eagles had the Dream Team offseason, and they brought in Nnamdi Asomugha and Vince Young.
Remember that.
This felt like it coming into the season. Like, all right, well, you got Alshon Jeffrey and like Garrett Blount. They're big names, but how's that going to really work? And it's been incredible. And all those guys, whether it be Chris Long, whether it be Blunt, last night, all those acquisitions all played the best game of their season. And then the draft pick, Derek Barnett, has the biggest play of the game. So the Eagles, they're clicking on everything. And I know we're going to talk Patriots in a bit, but I wouldn't want to face this Philly team right now. They are hot.
You mentioned two Patriots right there, and Chris Long, former Patriots, and LeGarrette Blount, who now get to face their former team all in Minnesota. And that is where we find our very own Randy Moss. He is at the site of Super Bowl 52, just a couple of weeks away out there. Looks like outside U.S. Bank Stadium there. Set the scene for us. What's the vibe in Minneapolis after just falling short of becoming the first city to host its own team in the Super Bowl? And also, tell me about that weather, because I need to start packing.
A lot of mellow music being played on Sports Talk Radio this morning. The Skull chants this morning are more like skull, skull. Pretty disappointing if you're a Vikings fan. I live here, but I'm not from here. It didn't take me long, though, to get a sense of the intense disappointment, the frustration, I guess is the better word, long-standing frustration of Vikings fans. It's not like being a Browns fan and having to deal with continuous mediocrity. The Vikings have had some really good teams. It's just that since they've been to the Super Bowl last at the end of the 1976 season, the Vikings have been to the playoffs now 21 years without getting back to the Super Bowl, including some unbelievably frustrating losses. In 1998, they were 15-1, perhaps the best team in Vikings history. They lost that NFC Championship game to the Falcons in a game they pretty much had wrapped up. In 2009, when Brett Favre was here, a magical season, maybe the best of Favre's career. Just as you can make the case that the Saints were probably the best team a week ago when they lost to the Vikings were probably the best team when the Saints beat them in the 2009 NFC Championship game. They turned the ball over 5 times in the Superdome. And then there was that field goal, that chip shot field goal a couple of years ago in Seattle at the end of the game that the Vikings lost. If there's one consolation, though, this morning for Vikings fans, I don't think the most fervent Vikings fan could be saying this morning, we were the better team, we should be going to the Super Bowl. There's absolutely no doubt after watching that game that, yeah, maybe the Vikings were a little emotionally flat after that, huge uplifting win, the Minneapolis Miracle. But clearly the Eagles were the better team, and they deserve to be playing in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're not shocked. Why are you guys talking about the Vikings? Talk about me. But how close is U.S. Bank Stadium ready?
caught that, that dramatic pass. They had crews on the field already starting the field conversion, pulling up the end zones, the big Horseman head at the 50-yard line has to be taken out and replaced with the Super Bowl logo. You think a lot of times, how difficult could it be? It's a football stadium. They have football games here all year. Yeah, they're going to play a football game here. How much transition really does there need to be? But there are a lot of unbelievable details. The press box in there holds 250 people. There are 5,800 credentialed media for the Super Bowl. They've got to have auxiliary press boxes all over. They've got to have international broadcast centers for the game. The NFL started work here on this Super Bowl when this was a hole in the ground 3 years ago. That's how much advanced planning it takes, but they're really working around the clock right now. The weather has helped. It's supposed to snow a foot today,